Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. I want to assure everybody here that I had no wine and no bourbon with my lunch today. And depending upon how the next few minutes go, hopefully you'll be thankful that you didn't have any with your lunch either. I want to thank General Zabel, the DISA seniors, everybody involved here with the opportunity to spend a couple of minutes with all of you talking about the men and women of the Joint Service Provider. We've got a couple of slides that will speak in detail about how we got here. This is the first ever opportunity for us to come and present at the Forecast Industry. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here, but most importantly, it's a privilege to represent the men and women of this organization. Most of you probably know how we got here, but I want to take a couple of minutes in the course of the briefing to help tell that story. With me today is Ms. Latweeta Hutchison. I think most of you probably know her from her time in the Pentagon. She's my wingman in this high adventure that we call the JSP. It has been an epic 16 or 17 months since we first started. And so what I really want to do is focus on those 2,500 plus people that constitute this new organization, 80% of whom are not government and not military. They come from our vendor partners and our contractors who support us in our day-to-day mission to support the Pentagon and the National Capital Region. And so we deeply value that relationship. It's critically important to us, critically important in the conduct of our everyday business. So how did this happen and how did we get here? Many of you probably know this, but bear with me and just give me a couple of minutes to kind of walk through it, because I think it really sets the stage and provides the proper context as we get into some of the acquisition opportunities and other things that we're looking at. You may know, but last year in May of 2015, Secretary of Work published a memo that said, Secretary of Work is directing the integration or merger of the two IT service providers inside the Pentagon, Army's ITA and WHS's EITSD. But in addition, we've consolidated a couple other sides of the house. We've since onboarded the entirety of the joint staff to include the chairman and the vice chairman, and all of his joint staff, JADERs, and all of the OSD, or most of all of the OSD Fourth Estate, into this singular organization called the Joint Service Provider. You can see the timeline there. There was a study back in October of 2014 up into Secretary of Work's memo, which was released in May of 2015, to a declared initial operating capability date in July of 2015, which was merely just a date in the calendar. All of our civilian partners will know this in your world as a merger and acquisition, sometimes friendly, sometimes not friendly. This one was literally a peanut butter chocolate, mash them together, ready, break, go. And so that's what happened. And a lot has happened over that balance of 16, 17 months, which brings us to our future orientation, where in about 10 months' time, we will forklift this organization of 2,800 people as an IOC interim organization into DISA under General Lynn as a DISA organization. So 1 October 2017, first quarter of 2018, JSP will be a DISA organization and will start falling in more traditionally on DISA processes and opportunities. Okay, so we also published a concept of operation, and we talked about that integration of all those four organizational entities down in the Pentagon and the National Capital Region. But a key fixture of that was this contract consolidation plan. And if you look at that little cheese grater in the middle of the diagram there, it's really important because we did a couple of things, in part which we were directed, and in part we sort of figured out for ourselves in terms of how to construct this merged and acquired organization into one singular operating organization that could actually be effective to provide the capabilities to the Department of Defense and all the senior leadership in particular, and the supported organizations, all of whom have critical mission in support of the Department of Defense. So starting that little block that says functional alignments, you've heard all day how DISA has recently in the last year or so reorganized. We sort of took that template and aligned ourselves, not exactly, but in very similar fashion to what DISA did in terms of its organization. And so where DISA has centers, we have centers. We built out an organization that was focused in four areas: business resource, cybersecurity, service delivery, and finally strategic plans and architecture. And that has helped us sort of align a lot of what we're doing today in this interim state to be prepared to forklift in 10 months into this as a broader organization. On the other side of that, we were given some very specific targets and milestones that we had to hit from Secretary of Work. in part, one was a FY16 number that we had to meet, and I talked to several senior leaders inside the Department of Defense and DIS and other places, and they said, that's fantasy, you'll never do it. They were right. We didn't do it. We exceeded it. We delivered 200% of that goal, roughly about $30.7 million in savings last year alone through consolidation and other efficiencies. So I believe we've firmly validated the concept and the construct of joint IT and cyber defense opportunities and organizations inside the Department of Defense. You can see along the bottom how we basically bend what were initially in the initial phase of this organization over 500 contracts between the two legacy organizations through that cheese grater to basically bin them in 10 rough buckets. And we'll walk through each of those in a little better detail in subsequent slides, but you can see desktop, computer net defense, server and compute, cybersecurity, engineering, identity, transport, network modernization, collaboration, and then large hardware and software consolidations. That's really kind of wave top for us. We have a lot of other areas that we're looking at, and we look at it on a daily basis, to be honest. One of the reasons we were able to hit that savings target is we put real effort and real scrutiny into how we were doing business. And similar to what Jesse just told you and what every other speaker up here has shared with you, everything they've said is exactly identical for us. We look at the same sort of constraints and drivers to dictate what kind of capabilities we got to deliver to the department, buttressed against what we're doing today and how we're going to do that a lot better and a lot more effectively and a lot more efficiently going forward in the future. So these are the opportunities that we have in the joint service provider today. And as I've talked about, we've already let the one contract on the consolidation of computer net defense that was awarded in September of this year, and same with desktop help desk consolidation that was awarded back in June. And then finally we have identity protection management, which we anticipate an RFP later this year with ideally award towards the fourth quarter of this fiscal year. Next set is the area of cybersecurity. Most of these consolidations, or not all of them, but most of them are oriented towards small business. This one in particular is set for release, we hope, this first quarter. We may not make that milestone. As Jesse said, same for us. Some of these are still being worked through the acquisition requirements, so these are notional dates, so don't hold us exactly to it, but these are our target dates. We'd like to get moving on this one pretty quickly. Likewise, the server compute one in the middle, targeting towards the end of the year. And then engineering is a big one for us. We have a lot of engineers today. Like many of you, we recognize that's a highly competitive market. I don't mean to be pejorative. We have some challenges with talent and skills. It's not because we have bad people, it's because it's a highly competitive market. So we're really on the lookout for that, and that's an area where we believe we can get a lot of help, and we're seeking that help. Again, targeting third quarter RFP for that. One of the more significant lines of effort for us in the joint service provider is network modernization. Some of you may be familiar with this. When we inherited the Pentagon and the NCR, we inherited $1 billion worth of infrastructure, which means we inherited $1 billion worth of infrastructural deficiencies and issues that have to be attacked. And so we're trying to attack them pretty aggressively. One of the ways we're attacking that problem is to modernize. We've got to break the cycle, as Jesse talked about in his presentation, of taking a legacy box out and replacing it with a new box that merely does what the legacy box did. And so we're very aggressively oriented in that direction. And so that RFP, I hope, is out very soon. Many of you are probably familiar with the engagement with the industry on that. If anything, I want to pull that left and go faster, and that'll be through GSA, and we're going to try to meet with GSA and see what, if anything, we can do to accelerate, but we really want to move fast on that. Same for transport, targeting in the next quarter. Hardware, software, consolidation, and collaboration. You can see the slides there and the notional dates, all of those which are actively worked. One of the things we've heard is how do we get in touch with or engage the JSP? I will tell you in all candor, over the last 12 to 14 months, I have been pretty candid that we just didn't have the organizational and human bandwidth to engage with our industry partners in a way that I wanted to or we needed to. It has been an epic 16 months. That $30 million savings that I shared with you is really just the tip of the iceberg. We did a ton of things, the list of which would frankly exceed my time and bore you to tears, and I know you're thinking too late, but anyway, it is really epic what the men and women have done. We moved over 500 people in the Pentagon and Mark Center and NCR. How many of you have been reorged and moved 500 people in 12 months? That undertaking alone, while seemingly trivial, is a huge lift for any organization. We sustained operations and we saved and we've modernized and consolidated, so I just can't give enough credit to the men and women of the organization. Anyway, the question has come up, okay, you're starting to open the aperture, JSP. How do we engage you and how do we work contracting offices? Well, our current state is in what we call an AdCon and OpCon relationship. So I've been afforded operational control of the organization through the authorities that were provided by Secretary Wark and Mr. Halverson. But the administrative piece is retained by the legacy organization. So the Army retains the AdCon of the ITA piece, and WHS retains the AdCon, the administrative piece, of the EITSD. That means we had in the last year to go through ACC Rock Island, and we have had to, and still have to go through, WHSAD for a lot of our contracting activities. We're sort of glide pathing out of that, and you can see this in the chart. So as we've wrapped up FY16, we're effectively out of business with ACC Rock Island. We're transitioning that piece to DITCO. We're in the process of doing that here in this fiscal year with WHSAD. We'll keep working through GSA and NIH, but eventually the idea when we forklift the organization into DISA in 18, for the most part, you'll have a point of entry with DISA DITCO, and you'll have the opportunity to sort of have, in effect, a one-stop shop, at least for point of entry. So again, Wavetop, what are our challenges in the JSP? There are many and they're epic, but for this forum and this discussion, as you've heard from many of the other presenters, the Pentagon, the NCR, and the inherited infrastructure is highly manual and legacy-oriented in terms of its provisioning and monitoring of the infrastructure. The Pentagon, during the PENREN innovation post 9/11, put significant investment in the IT infrastructure into the Pentagon itself, but it was based on a stovepipe wedge-based design that we're finding in the more modernized, virtualized era is not really best suited for the mission demands of all the supported organizations, so we're taking a look at that. We put folks on notice that we're no longer not going to allow hoteling of applications. We're putting real emphasis on compliance with all the directives that are already out there. We don't have to do anything new, we just got to comply. That's a culture change for a lot of people in the Pentagon, and that is driving a lot of activity inside the Pentagon that you may or may not see in terms of our tenant organizations, say Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, others, who had grown accustomed to be able to hotel various applications and servers and components inside the building. Well, that's going to start tapering out. We're going to provide some operational rigor and discipline into that environment, and so that's going to force some tough decisions for a lot of our partnered organizations at the Pentagon. Lots of gaps and seams in the maintenance and end-to-end monitoring and user experience. We spend a lot of time. If I had $1,000 for every time somebody grabbed me by the elbow inside the Pentagon and said, "What's up with the network? It's latent today," I probably wouldn't be here today. I'd be off on a golf course or off on a boat somewhere in the Chesapeake. Hear it every day. And so I turn around and ask them, well, how do you know? How do you know we have latency? I'm not trying to be pejorative. I just ask them, is it operating in specs and performance or isn't it? So we're spending a lot of time looking at that. And for us, it's highly valued to know the actual status and how the network and environment is operating. And it has to operate per the specifications that the government has paid for. We're not good on our documentation, architectures and settings. And then it's not really limited to sports mobile workforce. One of the accomplishments of the men and women in the organization, whether you knew this or not, is we put Wi-Fi in the Pentagon the last year. Did you know? How many folks knew that? Probably not many, but today in the Pentagon, there's a JSP WIN wireless network. It works great throughout the E-ring and much of the building. We've done it in 2 phases, and it's been a real success story. It provides NIPRNet capability and wireless network to a majority of the Pentagon. We're going to fund in this year our 3rd phase of that to round out roughly about 90%-ish of the full required capability inside the Pentagon. We'll look at the rest of the NCR later. And we started when this merger and acquisition occurred, the first discussions were, well, we don't have any money. We can't do this. Well, we went through our priorities and we self-funded a significant wireless footprint inside the Pentagon. So again, I'm very proud of the men and women and what they got done in short order and not a lot of time. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry, I got the slide. What am I thinking? So where are we and where are we going? So the foundation for all of this inside the Pentagon, in my view, is network modernization, and you'll see that RFP hit the street very shortly. It might be in the new year, but we're trying desperately to move that left. A lot of what you've heard Jesse and others, Dave Bennett, talk about is the sweet spot for us as well. There's really no news here. We all see this business and environment and the changes, I think, very similarly. We're already doing hyper-converged compute and storage inside the Pentagon. We're working on auto-provisioning. We've got infrastructure as a service. Can't get to the cloud fast enough, in my view. Cannot get to the cloud fast enough. Will we go to the cloud? Yes. When will we go? I don't know. The fundamental question, in my view, is not will we or when, but how will we go to the cloud inside the Pentagon? That, for me, is a big issue and a kind of a problem that we need to aggressively tackle. Rapidly virtualizing now today, end-to-end monitoring we've talked about. We are directed, as you know, to Windows 10, and we're pushing out aggressively. I talked about Wi-Fi, and we're going aggressively towards mobile and tablets. And we've been doing some piloting with soft client VTCs. All of that is less future and more today as a springboard or catalyst for whatever that next future evolution is going to take us. And we're leaning in aggressively. We're moving fast. Like Jesse said, we can't move fast enough. We'll take every bit of help we can get to figure out what that elegant or maybe even inelegant solution is to move towards the future as aggressively to modernize as we can, because that's a critical requirement, in my view, inside the Pentagon. So with that, I've got a couple minutes left for any questions. Again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity. It's a great privilege for me to represent the men and women of the organization. They have worked really hard. I'm blessed to have my hair. It's a lot grayer than it was a year ago, but I'm lucky to have it. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them, and if there are none, I'm happy to get you out a few minutes early. Any questions? Okay, thanks very much.